nervous, excited. He's got his adrenaline running. He knows he's about to get the signal to this man right here, Charlie Kirk. So let's take a look. He's staring down off into nothingness. Notice here his left arm is somewhat relaxed and bent slightly. That will remain bent. His left arm will remain with a slight bend in it. And he will continue to look off into nothingness until he gets the signal to take the shot. At which time you will see this arm go completely straight, like he's setting up a block. And at the same time, he turns his head for the very first time to look at Charlie and acquire his target. He will then lift his fist, his right-handed fist, which is containing and concealing what's called a palm pistol, like this one right here. And that palm will be aimed, I'm assuming, at Charlie Kirk's center mass, where he then squeezes the palm pistol, fires the round, and Charlie Kirk. Let's take a look at this. We'll take a look at it full speed here again. Take a look, so now that you know what to look for.
Not behind gang violence.
Great. Boom. Just murdered.
Yeah. Another angle of a potential of where this could have come
about Charlie Kirk now?
About Charlie Kirk.
So
that's the one, right? Pat, is that the one we're talking about?
That conversation?
Yeah. That was, and from my opinion, Patrick, this dude and a bunch of snipers, and me and Tom actually had a conversation last night. Never go with the official narrative. And when you're seeing different angles, and me and Mike even talked about this too, and I don't want to show close-ups or anything like that, Pat, because I don't want to they blow our...
Now know Tyler Robinson, the man suspected of shooting Charlie Kirk, will appear in court in person next month. His second hearing was today. He appeared virtually from jail. While he did not appear on camera or speak, we got to hear from his legal counsel for the first.
We don't know who all the witnesses are in this case yet. I think it's just important that if anyone is identified, that they have information about this order. So I think other than that, we wouldn't weigh in on any other matter.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that question. That's an important one. The court will rule that as the witnesses become known to each side, that information is conveyed to abide by this order. Obviously, there are potentially many witnesses, and so it's not the expectation that you would be able to do that up front. But as they become known, I would ask that you would inform.
They said it was an open and shut case, a lone suspect, a single shot, and justice served before the smoke even cleared. But the deeper you dig, the messier it gets. Because the bullet that allegedly hit Charlie Kirk, it doesn't even match the rifle they pinned on Tyler Robinson. From day one, the science whispered no while the headlines screamed yes. And now, buried reports, vanished witnesses, and a mysterious rooftop figure are forcing everyone to ask, did the FBI just frame the wrong man to protect the real shooter? The bullet doesn't match the gun. Let that sink in. The round recovered from the scene, the one that supposedly hit Charlie Kirk, doesn't line up with the weapon Tyler Robinson was accused of firing. Not the caliber, not the rifling, not even the ballistic fingerprint. It's like trying to fit a key into the wrong lock. But here's where it gets worse. Instead of resetting the investigation, officials doubled down. The mugshot was already on every screen, the suspect already chosen, the story already written. And from that moment, the science stopped matching. The entire case flipped from a manhunt to a managed narrative. Because if the bullet didn't come from Tyler's rifle, then somebody else pulled that trigger. And if witnesses really saw a figure retreating on the rooftop, then somebody else had the vantage point. So the question isn't what happened that day. It's who was never meant to be caught. From the jump, the public got a story so clean it almost sparkled. Officials stood at the podium in front of flashing cameras, declaring victory before the evidence had even cooled. They talked about teamwork, precision, justice, as if the case was solved overnight. They threw out numbers like confetti, 7,000 leads by morning, 11,000 by noon. Every stat sounded impressive, every soundbite rehearsed. But beneath the polished press conferences and tidy talking points, something fell off. It was too neat, too fast, too convenient. Tyler Robinson's name wasn't introduced as a suspect. It was presented as the conclusion. His photo rolled out like the final frame of a movie, a perfect villain for a frightened audience. No mention of the mismatched casing. No mention of the missing footage. Just a bow-wrapped narrative that made everyone feel safe. But clean stories don't always mean true stories. And the cracks in this one started showing before the ink on the first headline was even dry. The science never lies, but in this case, it was ignored. The bullet casing recovered from the scene didn't just slightly differ from Tyler Robinson's rifle. It was a completely different class of weapon. Different grooves, different markings, different caliber. The lab reports called it non-consistent. Translation: the bullet that hit Charlie Kirk could not have come from Tyler's gun. Normally, that would end the story right there. You pull the suspect off the board and start over. But instead, they buried it. Then came the residue tests, the chemical signature that tells you who actually fired a weapon. Tyler's results came back light, inconsistent, almost clean. Not what you'd expect from someone who supposedly pulled a trigger at close range. And the trajectory? Physically impossible. Based on the angle of entry, the shot had to come from an elevated position. But Tyler was on the ground. No clear line of sight. No way to make the shot unless he could bend the laws of physics. Still, the headlines rolled on like the verdict was already signed. The public was told the case was solid, airtight. But the evidence? It said the exact opposite. And by the time the science came in, the narrative was already locked. That's when the whispers started. Witnesses came forward saying what investigators refused to hear. They swore they saw movement, not on the ground, but above. A figure shifting on the rooftop just seconds after the gunfire. One woman said she heard the shot echo from overhead, not in front of her. Another described hearing two distinct pops, not an echo, two separate weapons. Different tones, different directions. But those accounts? They vanished like smoke. The official statements were incomplete. Some were filed under the wrong timestamps. Others were mysteriously redacted. One bystander even claimed they were told to stop talking about what they saw. Every first-hand description that didn't fit the pre-approved story somehow got lost on the way to the record. And yet, these weren't random bystanders guessing in panic. These were people standing close enough to feel the shockwave, to see where the sound came from. So, the question writes itself. Why would officials ignore multiple matching accounts? Why erase what didn't fit unless the truth was aimed higher than anyone wanted to admit? Then came the part that made even seasoned investigators uneasy. The evidence started disappearing. Not lost, not deleted, just gone. The surveillance feed covering Tyler's alleged position went dark at the exact moment of the shot. Not the entire system, just that one camera. A clean blackout lasting less than a minute, perfectly synced with the incident. When tech analysts asked for the raw footage logs, they were told the file was corrupted. Convenient. The original ballistics team? Reassigned. Their reports sealed to preserve the integrity of the investigation. In plain English, hidden from the public. The forensic analyst who questioned the mismatch between the bullet and the rifle quietly transferred to another department within weeks. No statement. No follow-up. Even the physical evidence, the casing itself, was reportedly moved without a clear chain of custody. One box, one label, one signature missing. And in cases like this, that's all it takes to make a file untouchable. Inside sources started calling it a controlled collapse, not an investigation falling apart, but being taken apart piece by piece. The cameras went dark. The witnesses went silent. The paper trail blurred. And as every trace of contradiction faded, one thing became painfully clear. The system wasn't protecting the truth. It was protecting the story. That's when the rumor stopped being rumor and turned into something darker. Within hours of Tyler Robinson's arrest, multiple insiders confirmed that a second individual had been detained. Not speculation. Detained. Witnesses saw it. A man taken into custody behind the venue, escorted by plainclothes officers, questioned briefly, then gone. No record, no photo, no name. Just a ghost in the system. The paperwork that should have followed, non-existent. The logs? Empty. It was as if he never existed. Even the officer who processed the initial detainment admitted off the record that someone was held for questioning but couldn't say who or why. And when journalists tried to follow up, the trail was already cold. What kind of suspect vanishes from official records hours after being taken in? What kind of investigation erases potential leads before testing them? Every thread points to the same disturbing pattern. Tyler wasn't the solution. He was the distraction. A scapegoat built for convenience, held up to calm the public while the real shooter slipped through the cracks. Allegedly. And that brings us back to the rooftop, the vantage point nobody wants to talk about. Multiple witnesses described the same thing. The sound of gunfire echoing from above, not the ground. A faint flash, then a shadow moving across the roofline. One man claimed he saw a figure duck behind an air duct seconds after the chaos erupted. Another heard boots running overhead before security even reached the stage. But not one of those details made it into the official report. There was no rooftop search, no thermal scan, no drone sweep, nothing. For a high-profile event with thousands in attendance, the total lack of overhead surveillance is unthinkable. It's as if that entire angle of investigation was off-limits by design. And that's the question that's now haunting everyone involved. Who benefits if the real shooter disappears? Because if the bullet didn't come from Tyler's rifle and the sound originated from above, then someone else, someone positioned perfectly, made that shot, and someone else wanted it buried. The motive suddenly looks less like chaos and more like choreography. You don't hide vantage points by accident. You don't black out footage by mistake. And you don't erase a second detainee unless his name changes everything. By now, it's not about incompetence anymore. It's about control. The kind that shapes headlines, silences experts, and punishes anyone who asks the wrong question. Behind the podium smiles and press briefings, federal agents have gone quiet. Reporters are hitting walls of NDAs and sealed records. Even local officers who worked the scene early on have been reassigned, restricted from speaking under ongoing investigation protocols. The story being sold to the public is airtight. But behind that perfect script, the cracks are leaking through. A mismatched bullet, a missing camera feed, a vanishing detainee, a pattern that doesn't look like coincidence. It looks like containment. And when the system starts protecting its version of the truth instead of the actual truth, you have to ask, what's left to believe? Because the deeper this case goes, the more it feels like every piece of evidence isn't being lost. It's being managed, controlled, curated. The justice system didn't just pick a suspect, it picked a narrative. And it's guarding that story harder than it ever guarded the facts. By now, the case of Tyler Robinson doesn't look like a manhunt. It looks like a message. Every missing file, every silenced witness, every redirected question forms a pattern too deliberate to ignore. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. And that raises the question, what was this really about? Was it about silencing Charlie Kirk before something bigger broke? Was it about staging a moment of panic, a political distraction dressed up as random violence? Or was it something even colder, an operation never meant to reach trial at all? Because once you start connecting the dots, the story shifts. Tyler's arrest, the missing footage, the ghost suspect, none of it adds up to justice. It adds up to control. And maybe that's the point. When narratives are engineered faster than evidence, when truth becomes a brand instead of a pursuit, the system doesn't need to find the real shooter. It just needs the audience to stop asking who. The longer you look at this case, the more it unravels, not into answers, but into patterns. Patterns of silence, patterns of erasure, patterns that only exist when someone powerful is writing the script behind the scenes. So here's where we leave it, not with closure, but with questions that won't go away. What really happened on that rooftop? Who was the second detainee that vanished without a trace? And why did the evidence, the real, tangible proof, start disappearing the moment it pointed upward? Because once you admit there was a second shooter, every motive changes. Every press release sounds different. Every fact starts to feel rehearsed. And that's when the lies start to make sense. So don't take their story. Follow the silence instead. Because in cases like this, the truth doesn't get revealed. It gets leaked.